communities and our country every day. And their work inspires African American school children everywhere to find their own means to achieve Black excellence. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Okay, so you're listening there to members of Congress kind of talk about miscellaneous items there. You can see that is the Congressional Black Caucus hour there. Many members of that caucus speaking out. This coming after the House voted to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas in a vote of 214 to 213 there. History in the making. We'll see what happens now in the Senate. In the meantime here, let's switch gears. Let's talk about some of these really big weather-related headlines as well. We've been covering this nor'easter for about 2 to 3 days' time, that powerful winter storm hammering cities right now in the Northeast, leaving some with more than 15 inches of snow. This winter weather is causing thousands of flight cancellations, highway closures, and car crashes. Let's go out to one of these cities that's getting a lot of snow. That's Providence, Rhode Island. That's where we find Fox News multimedia reporter Mills Hayes, our friend there. On a snowy street in Providence. Mills, who have you spoken to? How are conditions?
Hey, Andrew. Well, I actually was just speaking to some people who were out walking around, and the feeling from these people is that the snow amount is a little underwhelming, at least in the Providence area. Let me show you guys actually how much snow there is. So some parts of Providence are seeing nearly 6 inches. Right around here, when I pick this up and you can see the grass, I think that's about 3 to 4 inches right here. And so not a whole lot of snow in this area, but people here tell me they haven't seen snow in about 2 years, so it is still a welcome sight for many. However, it has caused public schools to close, county courthouses to close, and for some people who I spoke with this morning, they say they didn't know about the close.
Place what we call the 3 Ps. Though it's hard to believe now, the TVPA was met with a wall of skepticism and opposition, dismissed by many as a solution in search of a problem. For most people at that time, including some lawmakers, the term trafficking applied almost exclusively to drugs and weapons, not to human beings. Reports of vulnerable persons, especially women and children, being reduced to commodities for sale were often met with surprise, incredulity, or indifference. The bill was finally signed into law on October 28, 2000, and within a year after enactment, no one was arguing anymore that the Trafficking Victims Protection Act's integrated 3P strategy, prevention, protection for victims, and prosecution of the traffickers, was flawed, unworkable, unnecessary, or counterproductive. The TVPA included several sea-change criminal code reforms, including treating as a victim and not a perpetrator of a crime anyone exploited by a commercial sex act who had not attained the age of 18, and anyone older where there was an element of force, fraud, or coercion. The TVPA radically reformed the U.S. Criminal Code to authorize asset confiscation, as well as jail sentences of up to life imprisonment. Thousands of human traffickers have been prosecuted and jailed pursuant to the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, including, although he never came to trial, all charges brought against Jeffrey Epstein. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the number of persons prosecuted for human trafficking more than doubled from 2011 to 2021, from 729 persons to 1,672 persons, respectively. Among its many provisions, the Act also created the President's Interagency Task Force to monitor and combat trafficking persons, the U.S. State Department's Trafficking Persons Office, the annual TIP report, and I encourage my colleagues to look at it and to read it, at least when they're traveling especially, or meeting with delegations from other countries. Read the TIP report. Find out where that country that you're going to visit or whose lawmakers or diplomats you're going to be meeting, where they stand in terms of what they're doing with regards to trafficking. It also calls for serious and sustained efforts to eliminate human trafficking. If they don't, and if they really have a horrific record, they get put on Tier 3 for egregious violator, and they're subject to sanctions. Over the years, I've authored 4 additional laws, including in 2003, 2005, 2016. That was the International Megan's Law. And in 2019, the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Act. And we are reauthorizing that and the underlying TVPA today. Today, the House considers a 5-year reauthorization named after and in honor of the great abolitionist and civil rights leader, Frederick Douglass. Special thanks are in order to our original co-sponsors, including Chairman McCall, my subcommittee ranking member, Susan Wild, as well as Kathy Manning, who's managing over on the Democratic side tonight. I thank her. Ann Wagner, Henry Cuellar, Joe Wilson, Amada Radwagen, and Dr. Michael Burgess, all original co-sponsors of the bill. I thank you, and I say again, a special thank you to the extraordinarily talented staffers, including Mary Vigil, to my left, who did an amazing job on this. Janice Kaguyutan, never get it right. Thank you, Janice, for your work. Thank you to Mary Noonan, Doug Anderson, and survivors Bella Haluki and Robert Lung, who also provided tremendous insights. Provided insights, recommendations, and have endorsed this legislation. Terry Fitzpatrick, for example, director of the Alliance to End Slavery and Trafficking. It's a consortium of various groups. He has said, on behalf of them, the U.S. has the world's most comprehensive governmental effort to fight human trafficking, and this law is the reason why. It is the blueprint for comprehensive action at home and abroad. Updating and reauthorizing the act is essential to maintaining America's leadership. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops strongly endorsed the legislation and asked Congress to approve the measure without further delay, quote unquote, and went on to say we must unite to identify and address conditions that lead to human trafficking and promote efforts to prevent it, said Bishop Mark Zeitz. And a great big thank you to Kenneth Morris. Now, this man is the great-great-grandson of Frederick Douglass and the great-great-grandson of Booker T. Washington. He runs a group called the Family Initiatives, and he has been of such a great source and an inspiration for this legislation. He has said that this legislation, named after his ancestor, emphasizes education and the resilience as effective means to prevent human trafficking among children, prevent re-trafficking of survivors, and provide support and hope to survivors in their journeys towards self-empowerment. Mr. Morris goes on to say, in the words of my great-great-grandfather and great American abolitionist Frederick Douglass, quote, enslavement is a scourge on humanity, and that to expose it is to kill it. Slavery is one of the monsters of darkness to whom the light of truth is death. Expose slavery, he goes on to say, and it dies. This wisdom, he goes on to say, is in the form of human trafficking, which is modern-day slavery. Since 2008, he points out that they have helped and trained 60,000 adults and 500,000 children in the skills of keeping themselves safe from harm. This legislation has provisions in it to make our young people situationally aware from elementary and secondary school so that everyone knows what the traffickers do, how horrible their schemes are, their nefarious organizations, what they do with drugs and other ways of enticing young people, and next thing you know, they are trafficked and they're in modern-day slavery. Let me also point out that the bill seeks to promote, as I said, situational awareness. It also authorizes survivors' employment, housing, and education programs, authorizes a program for housing. You know, one of the things we find is that a woman or a man, but most are women, are liberated. Where do they go? They need help. And we do have programs in existence. This will redirect some of those funds to help them get a house, a home, so that they are less likely and less vulnerable to being re-trafficked. It makes scalable programs through training of the trainers in collaboration with Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force. It encourages the use of prevention efforts to include accessible, age-appropriate, and trauma-informed approaches for USAID beneficiaries, and further incorporates counter-trafficking efforts across our development portfolio. We know for a fact that it is a problem in developing countries where sometimes even the peacekeepers engage. I had hearings and worked on, and there was just another one the other day that John James chaired about peacekeepers. The fact that sometimes they become the ones who engage in trafficking and abuse young people. It streamlines statutory language for Tier 2 watch lists, reauthorizes the state office to monitor and combat trafficking. There's also language in about organ harvesting. Last March, we passed legislation to provide, to really combat this horrible organ harvesting debacle, where especially China are killing average age 28-year-olds in whether it be Falun Gong or Uyghurs, to steal their hearts and lungs and livers, especially livers. And unfortunately, it's a big business for the Chinese Communist Party, so we put language in this that will be part of the TIP report. It also reauthorizes the International Magazine Law. Now, what's that? Back in 1994, a little girl who used to be in my district, Hamilton Township, New Jersey, was killed by a convicted pedophile out of prison, lived across the street, and buried her after horribly abusing her. Well, every state, every one of our states has a Megan's Law, and they work really, really well. We found that many of the convicted pedophiles get a passport and travel, child sex tourism. So we wrote a law, I did it, and took 8 years to get passed, 3 times passed in the House. Senate wanted nothing to hear about it, but it finally got passed. And that says a number of things, including that before they travel, these individuals have to register with the U.S. government, and we inform the country of destination that they soon will be coming. If they want to say, no, you can't come in, well, that's exactly what happens. They don't get to go to that country. It's run by the Angel Watch Center. They do a magnificent job, and I want to thank them. The law is working. According to Homeland Security Investigations, HIS, the U.S. government has notified foreign governments of the planned travel of 27,679 covered sex offenders, and it has not been in effect that long. As of late January, 9,489 individuals who were convicted of sex crimes against children were denied, I say again, denied entry into those nations. So we've taken the secrecy out of